The skis over Earth split open in silence. At first it appeared as nothing more than streaks of light, as though dawn had come early. Then slowly a great triangular shadow eclipsed the sun, blotting out the blue. Cities across the planet froze. Pedestrians stopped in the middle of crosswalks, workers abandoned their desks, and children pressed faces against classroom windows. Every eye turned upward. The Kesari coalition had arrived. Their ship was not a vessel as humanity knew it, but a moving fortress, the size of a continent, floating in still defiance of gravity. Its hull shimmered like molten silver, reflecting oceans and mountains below. From the fortress, smaller ships descended into the atmosphere, their engines leaving trails of light. Governments scrambled into action. Satellites fed streams of images to command centers, and defense networks armed themselves in silence. Yet no shot was fired. Humanity had seen enough science fiction to know that aggression against something so massive would be suicide, and so the world waited, holding its breath. The first message came, translated perfectly into every language at once. People of Earth, the voice echoed across radios, televisions, phones, and even old speakers thought long dead. Do not fear. We are the Kesari Coalition, guardians of 1,000 worlds. Your species has been observed. Your world is fragile, your defenses inadequate, your kind unprepared for the dangers that lurk beyond your sky. But fear not, we extend our protection to you. On the ground, reactions varied. Some gasped in awe, others whispered prayers. Leaders in secure bunkers listened with furrowed brows, calculating what this protection might cost. The voice continued, deep and steady. Beyond your system lie predators, empires, and forces that would see you extinguished. Alone, you cannot survive. Under our guardianship, you will flourish, safe beneath our shield. In the United Nations chamber, hastily convened, the message was replayed again and again. Delegates debated furiously, some urging acceptance, others warning against trading freedom for safety. Cameras captured the tension, beaming it to billions who hung on every word. Finally, Earth's answer came, not from a president or a prime minister, but from an unexpected figure. A translator, young and sharp, standing among the officials, stepped forward when the Kesari envoys materialized in a dazzling shimmer of light. They were tall, luminous beings, their bodies flowing with streams of liquid energy. Their presence was meant to inspire reverence. The chamber went quiet as they repeated their promise: protection, guidance, survival under the coalition's wing. The translator tilted his head, studying them with a smile that made the alien envoy pause. He asked almost casually, "That's it, dangerous." Confusion rippled through the chamber. The Kesari envoy blinked, if blinking was the right term for eyes of molten gold. "You misunderstand," it said. "Your kind faces annihilation should you remain unguarded. The galaxy is perilous." The translator only grinned wider. His words, captured and broadcast across Earth, were simple. "We've lived with danger since we lit our first fire. Thank you for the offer, but you'll forgive us if we don't tremble." A murmur rose in the chamber, spreading into laughter in some corners. Humanity was not bowing, not cowering, but smiling. The Kesari envoys exchanged glances, their glow dimming slightly. In their long history of guardianship, few species had ever met their offer without relief, fear, or supplication. None had ever answered with a grin. That night across the planet, people debated endlessly. Some still argued that Earth should accept the coalition's shield. Others felt pride swell in their chest. To smile in the face of overwhelming power, was that arrogance or courage? The Kesari fortress remained in orbit, watching, studying. Within its halls, counselors murmured among themselves. "They do not comprehend the threats beyond," one said. "Or perhaps," another countered, "they comprehend them too well." On Earth, the phrase spread like wildfire. "That's it, dangerous," printed on banners, shared in messages, painted on walls. For the first time in centuries, humanity seemed united not by fear but by a grin aimed squarely at the stars. The Kesari had promised protection. Humanity's reply was simple. Danger was nothing new. The Kesari fortress remained in orbit for weeks, a silver moon that cast uneasy shadows across Earth's nights. Its silent presence dominated skis and minds alike. To many, it was a shield, proof that the coalition truly meant to protect humanity. To others, it was a cage, hovering above like an overseer. The first real test came when Earth launched its newest colony ships. 3 massive vessels, forged in orbital shipyards and fitted with engines reverse-engineered from scraps of salvaged alien technology, pushed beyond the safety of the solar system. Their destination, Proxima Centauri, a small colony venture humanity had been preparing long before the Caesari's arrival. The Caesari objected immediately. Their envoys materialized again, voices smooth but firm. Your kind is not ready. The Proxima region is contested space. We will dispatch escorts to safeguard your colonists. Earth's leaders nodded politely, neither agreeing nor refusing. The escorts came anyway, sleek, crescent-shaped warships sliding into formation around the lumbering human colony vessels. Their movements were elegant, efficient, a silent reminder of how primitive human craft appeared in comparison. At first, colonists whispered with relief. Perhaps the protection was useful after all. Yet as the journey stretched on, cracks began to show. The Caesari ships not only escorted but monitored. Every transmission, every maneuver, every scientific reading humans attempted to make was corrected with patronizing advice. When the colony convoy reached the edge of Proxima space, trouble came. A pirate band, scavengers from half a dozen species, swooped in with fast, needle-shaped raiders. They had heard the rumors. Earth was young, naive, ripe for plundering. Their plan was simple: snatch supplies, capture colonists, retreat before the Caesari even noticed. But they had underestimated the Terrans. The first raider lunged for the freighter Hopewell. Before the Caesari could respond, the colonists themselves sprang into action. Cargo bays converted into gun emplacements roared to life, unleashing railguns fashioned from mining equipment. Drones meant for asteroid excavation were repurposed as mobile defense swarms. Even the Hopewell's hull plating had been reinforced with crude but effective ablative layers, designed by human engineers with one guiding principle: assume someone will try to kill you. The first raider disintegrated in a flash of plasma. The second collided headlong with a decoy drone, its systems scrambled by a virus slipped into the comms channels by human technicians. Within minutes, half the pirate fleet was crippled. The remainder scattered in panic, fleeing into the void. By the time the Caesari warships moved, the battle was already over. The alien commanders hailed the humans, their voices tight with disbelief. Your actions were reckless, had we not been here. Had you not been here, Captain Rivera of the Hopewell interrupted, his voice calm but edged with iron, we would still have survived. We don't sit still and wait to be saved. The message rippled across the coalition's networks, replayed in hushed council chambers and alien marketplaces. The Terrans had fought off raiders with mining tools and improvised weapons, not just surviving, but winning. On Proxima's surface, the first human colony took root with stubborn determination. Prefabricated habitats unfolded across the Red Plains, while engineers set up geothermal drills. Colonists planted flags not in fear, but in defiance. They were watched from orbit by the ever-present Caesari, who whispered among themselves in growing unease. Back on Earth, news of the encounter spread faster than light. Every channel replayed footage of human freighters blasting raiders to scrap. Children painted railguns onto their toy ships. Teenagers shared the phrase, "Don't sit still and wait," as a slogan. Humanity's grin grew wider. But beneath the surface of pride, questions lingered. Why had the Caesari been so slow to react? Had they held back on purpose, expecting humans to panic and beg for help? Or had they simply underestimated humanity's resolve? The truth did not matter. What mattered was the lesson etched across the stars. Humans were no one's fragile wards. On the Caesari fortress, the envoys debated in hushed tones. They are not like the others. They smile at danger. They improvise in ways we cannot predict. Another replied, its glow flickering. We promised them protection, but what happens when the galaxy learns they may not need it? Far below, on a colony world that should have been a tomb, humanity built fires against the alien sky. The Proxima colony thrived against every prediction. Crops sprouted in domes sealed against the thin atmosphere, water was extracted from underground ice veins, and the settlement expanded with an energy that startled even its own planners. For the colonists, survival was not a gamble but a challenge, one humanity had been facing since it first crawled out of caves. Yet the Caesari could not help themselves. They called meetings, offered suggestions, and sent engineers whose technology gleamed with millennia of refinement. They insisted on recalibrating power grids, redesigning colony layouts, and optimizing food production. To them, humanity's methods looked crude. To the colonists, the interference felt suffocating. When the Caesari presented their proposal for an orbital shield network, one that would, coincidentally, be entirely controlled from their fortress, an argument erupted. Governor Naima Hassan of Proxima stood before the alien envoys with a calm face, though her hands were clenched into fists behind her back. "We appreciate your help," she said, her voice steady, "but this colony belongs to us. We will protect it in our way." The Caesari envoy's voice hummed with patient condescension. "Your defenses are inadequate. You lack the foresight to see the threats that approach. The network is necessary." Naima's smile was sharp. "And yet," she said, "when raiders came, it was our inadequate defenses that saved this colony while your warships hovered overhead watching." That silence was broadcast across the system. For the first time, cracks appeared in the Coalition's mask of serene superiority. Earth's media picked it up instantly. Debate flared. Some argued the Coalition still meant well. Others warned that protection was just another word for control. Old history lessons resurfaced, empires that had once claimed to guide weaker nations, only to chain them in dependency. The phrase patronizing chain began to circulate, coined by a commentator on a late-night broadcast. Soon it became a rallying cry. Humans would accept friendship, trade, even guidance, but not a leash, no matter how polished. The Caesari, however, were not accustomed to refusal. Their coalition had lasted 10,000 years, founded on the principle of guardianship. Most species they encountered welcomed their oversight, grateful to be shielded from cosmic predators. To find one that not only resisted, but openly mocked their authority unsettled them deeply. Meetings within the fortress grew heated. "They are reckless," one counselor declared. "Their arrogance will draw enemies upon them, and upon us by extension." Another disagreed. "No, they are dangerous because they do not behave as expected. Every calculation fails. Every prediction bends around their will. They smile where others bow. That is not arrogance. That is something else." Meanwhile, humanity continued to push outward. New expeditions launched toward distant stars, each one accompanied by Caesari escorts who found themselves more observers than protectors. On every journey, humans improvised, adapted, and thrived in ways the Coalition's neat, orderly methods could not anticipate. On Titan, a research base survived a catastrophic methane storm by welding habitats together into a sprawling fortress of pipes and tarps, an act the Caesari declared inefficient, even as it saved every life. On Mars, colonists grew crops in dust that the Coalition deemed infertile, using techniques born of centuries of human farming in hostile conditions. Again and again, humans succeeded not by following the Coalition's rules but by breaking them. Whispers began to spread not just among humans but among other species within the Coalition. Traders passing through Proxima carried stories. The Terrans grin at danger, they said. They build weapons from mining tools. They farm deserts. They argue with their protectors. The Caesari's carefully crafted image of benevolent guardianship began to crack. Some species started asking questions. If humans could stand without a leash, why couldn't they? Back on Earth, a summit was held between humanity and the Caesari. The Coalition once again pressed for greater oversight, insisting it was for humanity's own safety. The human delegation, led by Admiral Kian Park, listened patiently. When the Caesari finished, Park leaned forward, eyes sharp. "We've noticed something," he said. "Every time you warn us of danger, you never name it. You never explain who these predators are. You only say we need you to survive. That sounds less like protection and more like fear-mongering." The chamber went silent. For the first time, the Caesari faltered. The humans had not only refused their chain, but had tugged it, testing its strength. And the Coalition realized with dawning unease, perhaps it was not strong enough. The summit ended in uneasy silence. Humanity had walked away with its head high, refusing the Coalition's protective leash, while the Caesari left with whispers of doubt echoing through their ranks. But tension was no longer confined to speeches. Somewhere in the deep void, danger had been listening. The first strike came against the trade lanes near Sirius. Cargo vessels bound for Earth vanished, their signals cut mid-transmission. When a rescue fleet arrived, it found only drifting wreckage, twisted steel, shattered containers, and frozen corpses. Whoever attacked had left no signature, no survivors, only a warning carved into the silence of space. The Coalition blamed pirates, as always. They promised vengeance, yet their fleets remained curiously absent. Humanity, however, did not wait. Admiral Park ordered patrol groups drawn not from warships, of which Earth still had few, but from retrofitted freighters and converted mining vessels. Within weeks, a makeshift flotilla scoured the lanes, hunting shadows. The crews called themselves volunteers, though their grit rivaled any professional navy. It was during one of these patrols that humanity first glimpsed the truth. The Resolute, a converted freighter armed with crude missile batteries, intercepted a distress call from a stranded shuttle. As it approached, the shuttle's hull split apart like a blooming flower, and from within emerged sleek black ships unlike any coalition design. They moved like predators, silent and precise, their hulls absorbing radar and light alike. The fight was brutal. 2 of the volunteer ships were torn apart by beams of white fire, but the Resolute's crew, refusing to retreat, rammed their ship headlong into the lead attacker, detonating their reactor at point-blank range. The explosion consumed both vessels, and in the chaos, the remaining attackers fled. The coalition finally admitted what they had avoided saying aloud. These were not pirates. They were something far older, something the Caesari had kept hidden, the Vadran. The name alone sent ripples through every council chamber in the galaxy. The Vadran were not raiders or scavengers, but a species thought extinct, hunters who had once burned entire worlds into glass. They were the reason the coalition had formed millennia ago, the reason so many species had accepted the protection of the Caesari without question. And now they had returned. The revelation shook humanity but did not break it. If anything, it explained the patronizing leash. The Caesari had feared the Vadran's return so deeply that they had smothered every young civilization under layers of control. They had expected Earth to cower as well. But Earth did not cower. Within days of the Resolute sacrifice, factories on Mars shifted production to weapons. Colonists on Proxima built orbital defense rings. Earth's engineers uploaded open-source schematics for makeshift shields and missile platforms, and every settlement across human space began arming itself with whatever it could build. The coalition, alarmed, attempted to intervene. "Your actions will provoke them further," the envoys warned. "Only through submission to our strategy can survival be guaranteed." But the Terrans remembered the ruins of Sirius. They remembered the Resolute charging headlong into the fire, and they answered with one voice, "We will not bow. If the Vadran come, we will meet them." That answer sent shudders through the galaxy. Other species, long kept docile by the promise of protection, watched humanity with new eyes. They whispered, "If the Terrans can fight, why can't we?" The first blow had fallen, not only against human ships, but against the fragile order the Caesari had maintained for millennia. In the quiet chambers of their fortress, the Caesari debated furiously. Some argued to crush humanity before their defiance spread. Others whispered of alliance, of a strength the coalition no longer possessed. For the Vadran were not a phantom. They were real, and they were coming. Meanwhile, humanity prepared, not with fear, but with the same reckless grin that had unsettled the coalition from the beginning. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy was about to see a species that did not hide behind guardians. A species that sharpened its teeth when danger called. The Vadran had made their move. Humanity was already preparing its answer. The Vadran did not wait long to press their advantage. Their second strike came not at a trade route, but at Proxima itself. The colony had grown into a bustling settlement, its domes glittering across the crimson plains, its people proud of their independence. That pride became the reason the Vadran chose it as their next target. They came without warning, sleek ships dropping from dark space, their weapons lancing down like a storm of fire. The first barrage shattered orbital stations and tore through hastily built defense platforms. The Caesari, though present in orbit, did not move. Their fleets hung back, waiting, watching. It was humanity alone who fought. Governor Naima Hassan rallied the colonists. "We stand or we vanish," she declared across every channel. Families rushed into bunkers while engineers raced to keep power flowing to shield generators. Volunteers scrambled into converted mining craft, strapping on weapons meant for pirates but now aimed at an ancient terror. The battle was chaos. Human ships darted like gnats around the Black Vadran warships, firing missiles that detonated against armor far stronger than anything Earth had ever faced. One by one, those gnats were swatted from the sky, but each made the enemy bleed. One detonated its cargo bay full of fuel lines inside a Vadran docking bay. Another rammed a warship's bridge, cracking it open to the void. Every loss stung, but every act of defiance bought precious time. Time for the colonists below to finish activating their defense grid. At last, the grid roared to life, an array of rail cannons built from mining equipment, firing tungsten rods at hypersonic speeds. The first salvo ripped straight through a Vadran cruiser, splitting it apart like glass. The second barrage crippled another. For the first time, the Vadran withdrew. The cost, however, was staggering. Half the colony's fleet was gone. Thousands lay dead, their names already being etched into history, yet Proxima still stood and its people still breathed. The coalition could no longer pretend. The Caesari fortress finally opened its channels, addressing humanity with grim tones. You have seen them now. Do you understand? This is why we warned you, why we sought to protect you. Admiral Park, who had arrived late with reinforcements from Earth, stood in the ruined command center of Proxima's orbital station. His uniform was scorched, his eyes hollow with exhaustion, but his voice carried steel. We understand, he said. You feared them so much you chained everyone under your protection, but fear never stopped a predator, fighting back does. The coalition counselors fell silent. For the first time in centuries, someone had thrown their logic back at them and survived to prove it. Across human space, grief mingled with determination. Proxima had paid dearly, but its stand became legend. Children painted murals of the defenders, songs were sung of the resolute and the nameless miners who turned drills into weapons. Humanity had been thrust into the crucible and had not shattered. Yet the cost was not only measured in lives. Supplies dwindled, fleets strained under constant repairs. Colonists slept knowing another attack might come at any moment. Humanity was strong but not invincible. And the Vadran knew it. Intelligence reports warned of gathering fleets in the dark, massing like storm clouds. The Caesari fortress tracked the movements but offered no strategy. Instead, they repeated their refrain, "Only under our command can you survive." But something had changed in the galaxy. Humanity's defiance was no longer just humanity's story. Whispers spread among other species who had long bowed to the coalition. The Jari, insectoid miners from the asteroid belts, sent a discreet message of solidarity. We have seen what you did at Proxima. You fight as we wish we could fight. The Meridi, a quiet aquatic species, began stockpiling weapons for the first time in generations. Others, once silent, began to question the leash around their throats. Humanity had entered the crucible, but the fire was spreading outward. The Vadran prepared for a war of annihilation. The coalition clung to its doctrine of control, and Earth, bruised and bloodied, only tightened its fists. Governor Hassan said it best in her broadcast after the battle. We may be broken, but we are unbowed. If the Vadran come again, they will find us ready. Humanity does not yield, not now, not ever. Her words echoed across the stars, planting seeds of defiance in hearts that had forgotten what freedom felt like. The crucible had burned humanity, but what emerged from the fire was sharper than before, and the galaxy was beginning to notice. The smoke of Proxima's battle had not even cleared when humanity began to adapt. Loss was bitter, but for humans, loss had always been a teacher. In the shipyards of Mars, engineers tore apart wrecked Vadran fragments brought back from the battlefield. Their armor was dense, their energy conduits baffling, their weapons unlike anything in human design. Coalition scientists declared them impossible to replicate. Humanity shrugged and got to work anyway. Dr. Alina Ruiz, leading a ragtag team of physicists, machinists, and programmers, stood over a fragment of Vadran hull. We may not understand all of it, she said, but we don't need to. We just need to break it faster than they can use it. Within weeks, her team developed improvised railgun penetrators tipped with experimental alloys designed specifically to pierce Vadran plating. Others worked on adaptive shielding, cobbled together from repurposed mining fields and atmospheric containment systems. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. Humanity didn't need perfection, they needed results. Everywhere the same story repeated. Colonists who had once been farmers and engineers became weaponsmiths. Civilian freighters were stripped and armed with railguns. Factories printed drones by the thousands. Each failure was treated not as defeat, but as data for the next attempt. Admiral Park summed it up best. The Vadran evolved through conquest, we evolved through desperation. Let's see which is faster. The Vadran soon tested that claim. Their fleets returned, larger than before, descending on the Sol system itself. Earth's skies darkened as orbital defenses lit up, railguns firing in thunderous rhythm. Vadran beams lanced through orbit, shattering satellites and tearing apart defense platforms. But this time, humanity was ready. Swarm tactics turned the tide. Thousands of drones, little more than welded engines with explosives strapped on, swarmed the enemy ships. Individually useless, together they overwhelmed even the most advanced defenses. When the Vadran struck at Mars, they found not a weak colony but a fortress bristling with weapons designed by desperate, clever hands. And when a Vadran dreadnought broke through the line and threatened Earth itself, it was not a coalition fleet that stopped it. It was humanity. The Independence, a massive refitted asteroid hauler, rammed the dreadnought at full burn. Its crew had wired every chamber with explosives, turning the ship into a bomb of unprecedented scale. The detonation shattered the dreadnought in orbit, raining molten fragments into Earth's atmosphere. Billions watched from below. Humanity had bled, but it had risen. Across the galaxy, the shockwaves spread. The Jari miners armed themselves with drills turned into rail cannons. The Meridi converted their water-world harvesters into subaquatic warships. For the first time in living memory, other species saw an alternative to hiding behind Kesari walls. The coalition could no longer ignore the shift. In their fortress world, debates grew heated. Some Kesari warned that humanity's defiance would destabilize the galaxy. Others whispered that perhaps humanity's fire was exactly what was needed against the Vadran. But none could deny the truth. Humans were succeeding where the coalition had only endured. Back on Earth, a council of scientists, soldiers, and colonists met in the underground chambers of Geneva. They were exhausted, wounded, yet unbroken. Dr. Ruiz spoke with fire in her eyes. They call themselves predators, fine, but predators don't know how to fight prey that fights back. We'll show them. Governor Hassan, still bearing scars from Proxima, added, and when we rise, others will rise with us. We will not stand alone. It was not bravado. Already, whispers of an alliance independent of the coalition were spreading. A new order, one not built on fear but on defiance, was forming. The Vadran had unleashed their terror, but in doing so, they had awakened something far more dangerous. Humanity's refusal to yield, humanity's endless ingenuity, and humanity's gift for turning every loss into a weapon. As the next wave of war loomed, Admiral Park looked out over Earth's recovering fleets. They were battered, half-salvaged, half-untested, but alive, and in his heart he felt something the Vadran could never understand. Hope, because humanity had risen, and the galaxy was beginning to rise with them. The Vadran had expected humanity to burn out quickly, consumed by the weight of its own losses. Instead, every battle seemed to make them stronger. It was a pattern the predators could not comprehend. Prey was supposed to scatter, not sharpen its teeth. Word of humanity's defiance spread faster than even the Vadran warships could travel. In distant systems, species who had cowered behind the coalition's promise of protection began whispering of Earth. Miners sang of Proxima's stand. Merchants traded in recordings of the Independence's sacrifice, selling them like holy relics. Children of alien worlds grew up pretending to be human soldiers, charging invisible foes with wooden sticks. The Kesari fortress, once the symbol of authority, now faced unrest. Representatives of minor species demanded explanations. Why did humans fight while we were told to hide? Why do they bleed and survive while we are told resistance is impossible? The Kesari could not answer without admitting their doctrine had been built on fear, not hope. Meanwhile, humanity's strategy shifted. Instead of waiting for Vadran attacks, they struck first. Small task forces slipped through dark space, ambushing isolated Vadran supply lines. Converted freighters became decoys, drawing enemy ships into traps where swarms of drones awaited. It was war conducted like a knife fight, messy, brutal, and always unpredictable. One such raid became the stuff of legend. A Vadran fleet had begun constructing a forward base near the Uridan Rift, a shadowed region of space that would allow them to strike directly at Earth. The coalition had declared it hopeless, insisting the fortress was impregnable. Humanity disagreed. Admiral Park gathered every volunteer ship he could, 30 vessels in all, most little more than armed freighters. They slipped into the rift under the cover of magnetic storms. When the Vadran realized what was happening, it was too late. The humans detonated fuel lines across the rift, turning the very environment into a weapon. Explosions cascaded like wildfire across the void, consuming half the Vadran fleet. The rest fled in disarray, leaving the base a ruined husk. The cost was high, half of Park's ships never returned, but the message was clear: humanity could strike anywhere. The raid sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the Vadran had not just been resisted, they had been beaten in their own chosen ground. The fragile balance the coalition had enforced began to fracture. The Jari miners openly declared they would no longer pay tribute to the Caesari. The Meridi sent warships alongside human fleets. Even species long thought too timid to fight began to prepare. A coalition of the brave was forming, not from fear but from fire. The Caesari Council convened in desperation. Their fortress was ringed with protests from species demanding change. Inside, the councilors argued in hushed tones. Some demanded humanity be reined in before they shattered the order completely. Others, older and wiser, admitted the truth: the old order was already broken. In the middle of this upheaval, humanity broadcast a simple message to every corner of known space. It came not from generals or scientists, but from Governor Hassan, her voice scarred but strong. "We are not asking you to fight for us. We are telling you to fight for yourselves. The Vadran cannot be appeased, they cannot be bargained with, but they can be beaten. You've seen it with your own eyes. Stand with us and we will stand with you." Her words struck like a thunderclap. Across the galaxy, people listened, and for the first time they believed. The Vadran, furious at their losses, gathered the largest fleet yet, intent on erasing humanity in one decisive strike. Their ships blotted out the stars, their weapons humming with power. To the coalition, it looked like the end. But humanity did not cower. Instead, they called on their new allies. Jari miners arrived with drill ships armed with improvised cannons. Meridi fleets glided through dark space like predators of the deep. Independent species who had once hidden behind walls now poured into open battle. What had begun as humanity's lonely stand was transforming into something larger. A movement, a rebellion. At the heart of it all stood Earth, battered, scarred, but burning brighter than ever. The turning point had come. The galaxy no longer asked if humanity could survive. The question now was whether the Vadran could survive humanity. The Vadran armada swept into the Sol system like a tidal wave of steel and fire. Thousands of ships, each bristling with weapons, converged on Earth. To the coalition, it seemed inevitable that humanity would finally fall. To humanity, it was simply the moment they had been waiting for. Admiral Park stood aboard the Resolute, Earth's flagship, watching the enemy formation unfold. His crew, a mix of humans and newfound allies, worked with quiet determination. No one expected to live through the day, but no one flinched either. "Transmit," Park ordered. Across every frequency, every screen, every corner of the galaxy, a human voice carried out into the void. "We are not prey, we are not weak, and today we show the Vadran and the galaxy that humanity stands unbroken." The battle began. The first Vadran wave struck Mars, where rail cannons hidden in the planet's canyons opened fire. Improvised drones launched from orbit, swarming like hornets. Many were destroyed, but enough slipped through to tear gaping holes in enemy hulls. At Jupiter, human freighters loaded with antimatter charges ignited the gas giant storms, unleashing magnetic chaos that scrambled enemy sensors. The Vadran ships reeled as lightning arced across their hulls. Near Earth, Allied fleets joined the stand. Jari drill ships rammed into Vadran cruisers, tearing through armor with industrial claws. Meridi warships unleashed torrents of searing plasma, weaving through the battle like predators of the deep. It was not order, it was chaos. But in chaos, humanity thrived. The Vadran pressed harder. Dreadnoughts advanced, their beams carving through defenses. Entire cities on Earth trembled as shockwaves struck atmosphere. For every victory, a dozen sacrifices were made. Humanity bled, but humanity endured. Then came the gambit that would turn the tide. Dr. Elena Ruiz's team had spent months secretly constructing a weapon born from Vadran wreckage. It wasn't perfect, wasn't tested, but perfection was a luxury humanity never had. They called it the Mirror. Deployed near Earth's orbit, the colossal device captured the energy of incoming Vadran beams and redirected it. When the first dreadnought fired, expecting Earth's defenses to crumble, its own weaponry was reflected back. The dreadnought shattered in an explosion so massive it lit Earth's skies brighter than dawn. Across the battlefield, cheers erupted. For the first time, the Vadran knew fear. Park seized the moment. All ships pushed forward. What followed was less a battle than a storm. Human and allied fleets surged, striking with reckless ferocity. Freighters rammed cruisers. Drone swarms consumed carriers. The mirror reflected beam after beam until Vadran formations collapsed in disarray. By the end, the Vadran broke. What remained of their fleet turned and fled, abandoning the Sol system. Humanity had stood against the Predator Empire and won. But victory was not only measured in ships destroyed. It was measured in the silence that followed. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy saw the Predators retreat. News spread like wildfire. On distant worlds, enslaved peoples rose in rebellion. On the Kesari fortress, crowds filled the streets, no longer begging for protection but demanding freedom. The coalition dissolved within weeks. Its walls, once symbols of safety, were torn down by those who realized safety had never been enough. In its place, something new was born, an alliance not of fear but of choice. At its heart stood Earth. Years later, monuments would rise on dozens of worlds. Some honored the independents, whose crew gave their lives to save Earth. Others remembered the miners who turned drills into cannons, the farmers who became soldiers, the children who grew up believing in hope instead of hiding behind walls. And everywhere one truth echoed: humanity had not just defended itself, humanity had changed the galaxy. When asked what made humans different, the answers varied. Some said it was their ingenuity, others their resilience, others their refusal to quit. But those who fought beside them knew the truth. It was not that humans did not fear. It was that they looked fear in the eye, grinned, and moved forward anyway. The Vadran would never forget that day. Their name, once a symbol of terror, became a whisper of defeat, and though they vanished into the edges of dark space, the galaxy no longer feared them. Instead, it feared and respected humanity. As Admiral Park once said, standing on the deck of the Resolute after the final battle, "They promised us protection, we chose defiance, and that is why humanity endures." The galaxy would never be the same again.